In the last 20 years, there is no one person who had a bigger impact on the game of basketball than Steph Curry. Before he started to ascend to unseen heights in about 2014, people weren't shooting threes anywhere near the range or volume Steph did. Now you've got 9-year-olds all the way from Montana to Beijing doing it, and an entire generation of up-and-coming NBA guards have in many ways applied it to their games. Shoot, even LeBron started pulling from the logo. In this film study, we'll take a look at some of the most important pieces of Steph's game and what makes him one of the greatest to ever pick up a basketball. It wouldn't be right to start anywhere but with Steph's shooting ability. He's inarguably the greatest shooter of all time at this point, and this is where his biggest impact on the game resides. The part that sticks out the most is the confidence in the range he shoots it from. That only grew as he improved as a player, and by the time he was in the league for a few years, he literally started changing the way the game was played around the world. The gall that it takes to attempt some of these shots, man. You have to be nearly insane to think about taking these shots, let alone work on them enough to have the confidence to take them with millions of people watching. Part of the reason I personally enjoy Steph's game, specifically as a shooter, is because he frequently breaks rules that people have been teaching for years. While everything he does shouldn't and really can't be replicated, he is sort of a mythbuster for a lot of the old shooting guidelines. Funny enough, outside of Klay Thompson, a lot of the greatest shooters are, but that's for another day. Let's take a deeper look at a few pieces of his technique. He has a dip that varies depending on the range he's shooting from. This is for power and rhythm purposes. He releases it right above his head, more in front of his face, has a slight thumb flick, and rarely consistently holds the follow through in the way a lot of people have taught it for decades. Once the ball leaves his hands, it pretty much becomes party time. He's also a one motion shooter, meaning there is no stop or pause at the height of his shot or jump. He simply lets it fly in one fluid motion, making it easier to replicate and create muscle memory from top to bottom. Steph most commonly shoots it off the hop or the traditional left-right footwork. He'll occasionally go right-left, but in a lot of the situations that right-handed players would do that, he chooses the hop. He uses the hop brilliantly to regain balance, control, and power. You'll often catch him doing this in transition, coming off of screens or, like we mentioned, going right. This is such a pronounced movement for him, and he's such a good shooter that it sets up a lot of other things in his game, but we'll get into that a bit later. He also uses step backs and side steps more than he gets credit for. They're more subtle and not as pronounced as a Bradley Beal or Kyrie, or as unique as a James Harden, but it is extremely effective and he uses it a lot. He has great balance, stays on his toes, and makes a high percentage of these shots. Steph is also more of a hip alignment shooter, also known as the turn in some circles. Instead of being 10 toes and shoulders square to the rim, he more aligns his right hip, thus his feet are tilted to the left. Now this is still pretty controversial in a lot of circles, but for me personally, I believe what Steph does is the proper way. You'll notice that most high-level shooters do this as well, and it's just mechanically natural. That whole 10 toes to the rim stay square logic minimizes power and accuracy and puts a ton of torque and tension on your shoulder. Aligning your feet and hip in this way creates a straight line between all of your common points: foot, knee, hip, elbow, and the ball. Steph does this beautifully, and it's a big reason of why he can get his shot off so quickly and accurately in a variety of settings. Unless you're doing a step back or side step going in the direction of your shooting hand, it's going to look something like this. Moving on to Steph's movement shooting. He's probably also the best ever at shooting on the move and moving without the ball and relocating. There were guys like Ray Allen, Reggie Miller, and even Rip Hamilton who put tremendous amounts of pressure on defenses because of their off-ball movement, but none were as big of threats with the ball or frankly as dynamic as Steph is. I mean, I couldn't imagine having to guard Steph off the ball for 48 minutes a night, especially if you're also somebody who's actually good offensively. Let's start with his movement through screens and sets. Whether it's a corner pin, floppy, flares, elevators, or he's setting the back screen to then get the ball, or he's slipping as a screen man up top, he's usually going to get open and get off a good look. He's got tremendous timing running through these sets, and he knows when to give his defender a little nudge that'll end up changing the whole play.
Obviously the pace has been different, but they're swinging the ball as well.
You're not going to find a player in all of basketball better at relocating than Steph. Having a guy like Draymond Green on his team is absolutely perfect for him, and Draymond has unlocked a lot of his game, so he deserves some credit, but Steph's innate ability to continue moving after he's cut off, or after kickouts or escape passes, is one of a kind. And the rest of his team deserves a lot of credit as well. Guys like Klay Thompson, Andre Iguodala, Sean Livingston, and several others would frequently set these little pin screens in the corner to get him easy looks after he just gave up the ball, and the defense thinks that they can rest a bit. Most of the time it was never a set play, it's just high level basketball from a team that was clicking on all cylinders behind the engine that is Steph Curry. Kelly Oubre, Andrew Wiggins, and a few of these other young guys had a tough time adjusting to this early in the season, and it's part of the reason Steph came out the gate a bit slow this year. Look at Mike Conley trying to relax for just half a second. Like, my goodness, this is just criminal. It's not unguardable in the way we think about the things LeBron or KD does, but it's just as ridiculous. Steph has to be on the short list of greatest handles ever. He's not a guy like Kyrie or Iverson or James Harden who are really going to break you down straight up, or at least in the traditional way. However, that doesn't make Steph a slouch. Outside of Jamal Crawford, Steph's handle is probably the most loose out of any of the other ball handlers in the pantheon. He's shifty and plays with the momentum of his defender. He's not overly quick, strong, explosive, or anything of that nature, but he's unpredictable and unorthodox, and it makes him super tough to stop. He loves the behind the back in a variety of situations. He may use it to re-establish himself while heading backward, or he may use it as a throw over to get outside of the defender's body and force him to recover hard and fast, given that he will pull up from 40 at any moment. Steph loves that little curl or hang dribble moving side to side to gain rhythm, and it allows him to read his defender and get outside of his defender's body.
Curry behind the back, gets away from Leonard, 2-point shot, it's good. That doesn't his game. That's why it's an 8-point game. Steph?
Now, Steph's hezzy is probably one of the more underrated moves in the league. The defense is constantly trying to do whatever is possible to not allow him to get off a clean look from 3, and this gives Steph the ability to use counters, and he uses it in a ton of different settings. Like we mentioned earlier with how he uses the hop to shoot, he often uses the hop to sell the shot and either drive or at least create space from his defender and put pressure on the rest of the defense. I feel like a lot of the time the ones that do resemble the hop are those that get the defense to commit the most. Now watch his feet. It's quick and subtle, but enough to draw the defense in. Another big piece of this is his head and his eyes. Steph usually focuses in the dead space when he's got the ball. You can't really predict where he's going to go until that last second he decides to shoot it. So when he lifts his head up, it naturally forces defenders to react forward, and then bringing the opposite hand in further sells the move. The shiftiness to his game is often evident when he pulls back either with the behind the back or between the legs, to which he often throws the hezzy in there after he initially got his man leaning. He does an amazing job of reading his defender's momentum. Now what I mean by that, there are a few ways he does this, and for a player like him, they come naturally. There's probably only a rare occasion where Steph is actively thinking about what he's doing, his defender is doing, or what he's going to do. It's just natural and he's playing off instincts. But the hips are a big tell. When the defender turns their hips in recovery, he's going the other direction. And his timing is so good, it's almost like he catches them in mid-step every time. He's always looking to attack that top foot, and if he can get his man to turn his hips just once, they're pretty much food at that point. He's going to find an advantage and act quickly. Watch all three of these guys. Just as soon as they turn their hips, he's going back the other way. Whether it be the step back, behind the back, crossover, he's always shifting his opponent and is super effective. Steph's traditional crossover is quietly deadly as well. Steph gets just a bit outside of his man either with that hang dribble or with the behind the back, and in textbook fashion sells the move with his opposite knee nearly parallel to the ground and yanks the ball back, setting up enough space. It's subtle and not as pronounced as an Allen Iverson or Tim Hardaway, but it is still really effective. His cross effectiveness has a lot to do with his ability to read momentum, but watch him get outside of his defender and just yank them on some scorpion stuff. When you're the greatest shooter of all time, the other parts of your game can easily go unnoticed, or at least unappreciated. Steph is one of the most creative and effective finishers I've seen at that guard spot. He's got a tremendous amount of touch, and his ability to innovate has shown up here as well.
This play just speaks volumes for itself, and only down if he makes this down.
Allow me to have this dance. Breaks him down, and the ability to finish.
In a 3-point lead with 5 minutes left in the first.
You got to be solid on your pick and roll defense. Know exactly what you want to do defensively.
Oh, Steph!
Having that third ball handler in there.
Green up front, Iguodala. Curry in the backcourt. Curry with a beautiful move. Curry to the rim.
Curry. Steph around Beverly. Show and go on Harden. Curry stealing the inbound. Curry flipping it up.
It takes a ridiculous amount of touch and muscle memory to be able to finish these underhand scoops over a 7-footer going full speed at the bucket like he does. There's really not much detail to put down in this area of his game. He's just put in a ton of time working around the basket with both hands to be able to pull stuff like this off.
I know billiards. Steph down the lane.
Steph Curry the fake. Gets past Leonard. Flips it up to the foul. Curry splits the defense. Gets inside. High off the glass and banks it home.
The last piece of Steph's game that we'll focus on in this film study is his passing. In 2013-14, in the 2013-14 season, before the entire world either absolutely loved him or hated him with a passion, Steph put up 8.5 dimes a game. One-handed passes are routine for him, especially the overhead whip passes he often throws in the pick and roll or the pick and pop with Draymond.
Wiseman, Curry, high pick and roll. Give it back to the big kid. Oh! Right now, the Warriors 24th in offense right off the bat. This is the double team. You see Anunoby, how he came over, he showed, and Pascal's in.
Oh, Curry tantalizing him.
Knocked away by Noel. Curry gets it back behind the back. And then Looney puts it.
Appreciate you guys for watching. Hopefully you got something useful or interesting from this video of one of my personal favorite players to watch, and inarguably one of the greatest of all time. Be sure to like if you enjoyed, subscribe if you haven't already, and comment down below what you think of Steph's game or a certain portion of the video. I'm Keandre, this is Hoop Intellect, and I'm out.